Hello and welcome back to the Church of the Templar Mormon, and thank you for joining me again. And today we want to talk about a little bit about Joseph Smith. And back when I was in college, I had had some brain physiology classes, and in that I learned about epilepsy. And I think we all know about grand mal epilepsy, where people are writhing on the ground, and might swallow their tongue or whatever and having fits. But there are other types of epileptic fits. Some are quite mild, and a lot of them involve just kind of staring into space. And this might be accompanied with auditory or visual hallucinations. In Joseph Smith's story of his first vision, he talked about, feeling like darkness was closing about him, and he felt like he might even die. And then he saw a beam of light come down and rest upon him, and he saw two people in this light. This is very similar to other stories of epileptic seizures. And so this made me think that Joseph Smith may have only been, he may have been an epileptic. He may have been having seizures, having hallucinations, and then from this, he started a whole religion based on this. When I read eyewitnesses' accounts of his later revelations, they would say that he would just stare off into space, and then he'd come to and say, "Oh, I just had a vision, and I saw this and I saw that." Again, epilepsy could explain this, and this was fine with me for a while. I mean, now I had an explanation of how Joseph Smith came up with this, and better than the original one that he just made it all up. This gave me something that he could have hung his hat on, so to speak. So that was fine for a while, and I had not much else to care about the Mormon Church at that time and about Joseph Smith. But later on, I read this book, which had been out for a while, and I remember when I was a teenager, my older brother at the time was, and still is, a very active Mormon, and he made me promise never to read this book because it was full of lies. And this book is called No Man Knows My History by Fawn Brody. She's a historian at UCLA, and in this book I found it was very well documented and cited, and she had done her homework. But in this book, her main thesis, or at least I felt that her main thesis in this book, was that Joseph Smith was basically a con man, and the church was just a way for Joseph Smith to con people into giving him money, and supporting him and his family, and and he eventually he just kind of got caught up in this whole con and kind of swept along with it, not wanting to admit that it was all a lie. and it eventually they murdered him, and he suffered the all. After reading that, it left me very angry, because my family was all Mormon, and I have some family members that have been Mormon since Joseph Smith's time. So I was very angry that my family had been conned like this. Their lives have been taken up by this con, and I guess the thing is that this con still goes on. People still believe this wholeheartedly, and it's all just a con. Or so I believed at the time. It explained things, and so I was just angry with the Mormons, and angry that they would be conning people like this and drawing people into this. So after a while, after years went by, I saw in the news that the NSA, the National Security Agency, was building a huge structure in Salt Lake City. And this structure was to house all the, intercepts that they had on phone calls and emails and things like this in Salt Lake City. And well, I thought, that's interesting. I realized not only was the NSA storing all these records there, but the Mormon Church, of course, was storing lots of records there. They claimed it was for genealogy purpose, and the Mormon Church has this big mission about genealogy and finding roots and all that. So they had records of everybody's birth and their death, their marriages, all the vital statistics was all kept in a mountain right there outside of Salt Lake City. But then I realized the United States Postal Service keeps records of everybody's move. When you move, you go down to the post office and you fill out a card and say, I'm moving to this new address, and it's me or my whole family, we're all moving. And I found out that this is being kept in Salt Lake City. They used to have other sites around the country, but they closed all of those, and they kept the one in Salt Lake City. So they're keeping these records of people moved. Now, the post office claims that, well, we only keep these for 18 months. But knowing the government, they never throw away anything. Everything is archived. They have records going back decades or further. So these records of your moving and your movement and every place you've ever lived is all kept by the post office in Salt Lake City. So that's the NSA is keeping records there, the Mormon Church is keeping records there, and the post office is keeping records there. And I remember years ago, there was a case, and I don't remember which which justice of the Supreme Court this was, but he went up before Congress to be approved, to be nominated as the Supreme Court justice. And one of the things they did when they were interviewing him is they had pulled out his credit card records, and from this they had gotten a list of every book he had ever bought. And they were using this to say, why are you reading this book? Why are you reading this book? Did this book influence you? And I remember at the time, I was greatly shocked. It was like, they have records of every book I ever bought or ever owned, and me I've always been a little studious, and I've always read books, and sometimes I've read some controversial books. I've read Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler, and I've read the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx, and and I didn't like the idea that that the government and their agencies could come along and say, we see you've been reading the Communist Manifesto. Why are you reading this book? Are you a communist? So it kind of scared me a little bit that the government could do this. But then I found out that credit card companies like American Express and Discover Card and other credit card companies keep their records of everything we've ever bought in Salt Lake City, Utah. Then it's starting to strike me as odd. Why is all these records, NSA, post office, credit card records, vital statistics, they're all being kept in Salt Lake City, Utah, the home of the Mormon Church? Is it just a coincidence? Or is there some other force behind the scene bringing this all together? And that's some stuff I'd like to look at maybe the next few videos. So I invite you to join me again for another video, maybe in a week or so, and we'll talk about some more about this stuff. So I thank you for joining me. I invite you to subscribe to my channel and support the work I'm doing here, and I hope to see you back again. And thank you very much.